Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Have you ever thought about how movies change the characters we love from books? What if some of them became stronger, smarter, or even more powerful on screen? In today's video, you will find out which Harry Potter characters got a serious upgrade in the films. The world of Harry Potter is filled with incredible characters. Each has strengths, weaknesses, and defining traits that make them unique. The movies did a fantastic job bringing them to life, but some changes were inevitable. In some cases, these changes made certain characters much stronger than their book counterparts. Let's take a look at some of the biggest transformations. Harry Potter. The films made magic battles bigger and more intense, which affected Harry himself. His final fight with Voldemort was much more dramatic than in the books. While book Harry mostly relied on luck and Voldemort's own mistakes, movie Harry fought back with real determination. He didn't just dodge and use Expelliarmus, he went head-to-head with the Dark Lord in a way that felt like a battle between equals. Hermione Granger. She's brilliant, ambitious, and a role model for many. But the movies polished her even more, often at Ron's expense. In the books, Hermione is flawed, narrow-minded at times, overly stressed about school, and occasionally insensitive. The films erased these rough edges, making her almost too perfect. She always had the answer, always saved the day, and rarely showed the same social awkwardness as her book counterpart, Dumbledore. He was already one of the most powerful wizards, but the films took his abilities to another level. His duel with Voldemort in the fifth movie was stunning, filled with grand magical displays. In Half-Blood Prince, he created a massive firestorm in the Horcrux cave, while in the books, his magic was more controlled. The films also gave him an ability he didn't have in the books, apparating straight out of Hogwarts, despite the school's supposed anti-apparition wards. Dolores Umbridge. One of the most hated characters in the series, Umbridge even managed to outshine Voldemort in pure loathsomeness. The films captured her sugary sweet menace perfectly, but they also made her a bit more formidable. In the book, the centaurs carried her off almost immediately in the Forbidden Forest. In the film, she held her own for a while, using magic to fight back before finally being taken. The Hungarian Horntail. In the Goblet of Fire, Harry had to steal a golden egg from a dragon. In the book, he simply outflew it, dodging until it lost interest. But in the film, the dragon was relentless. It broke free, chased him across Hogwarts, and nearly killed him in an action-packed sequence that never happened in the book. It turned a tense moment into a full-blown thrill ride. These are just a few of the many ways the films changed the characters. Some for the better, some for the worse, but all in a way that made the cinematic world of Harry Potter even more exciting. What do you think? Did the movies improve these characters, or did they take away something important? Let's discuss in the comments. Minerva McGonagall was never just a teacher. She was a force. In the books, she commanded respect with her sharp mind and unwavering discipline, but in the films, she was transformed into a warrior. She wasn't just a professor anymore, she became the general in the final battle for Hogwarts. One of the most striking changes is her duel with Severus Snape. In the book, she doesn't fight alone. Phileas Flitwick and Kingsley Shacklebolt stand by her side. Their combined strength forces Snape to retreat. But the film isolates her. She stands alone, her wand moving with precision, her power undeniable. With each spell, she drives Snape back. His defense turns into retreat. Then with a final blast, she sends him crashing through the window, proving that Hogwarts belongs to her, not him. As soon as Snape disappears, she takes charge. In the book, she spends time carefully preparing the school's defenses, consulting others, organizing every detail. In the film, there is no time for deliberation. She gives orders, her voice sharp and commanding. "You know what to do," she tells the teachers. "Pietotum locomotor," she declares, and the statues awaken. This scene is a triumph. The book treats it as a strategic move, but the film gives it emotional weight. She watches the enchanted figures march, her lips curling into a rare smile. "I've always wanted to use that spell," she admits. McGonagall is a woman of control, but the movies allow her emotions to surface. When she sends the students into battle, her voice trembles. Fear lingers beneath her strength. In the book, she stays composed. In the film, her expression cracks as she watches Hogwarts crumble around her. For the first time, we see the deep sorrow in her eyes. Her loyalty to Harry Potter has always been steadfast. She protects him when Umbridge tries to interfere with his dream of becoming an Auror. Potter has achieved exceeds expectations in his Transfiguration OWL. She says coldly, "Why he should need further instruction in this subject, I do not know." Even under ministry pressure, she never wavers. But in the films, her devotion is more visible. She stands between him and the Death Eaters, never hesitating. McGonagall's strength is not just in her magic, it's in her resilience. When Hogwarts is under siege, she doesn't just defend it, she fights for it as if it were her home. And it is. The book shows her making tactical decisions, the film turns it into something personal. She doesn't simply protect a school, she protects every student who has ever walked its halls. Her moment with Neville Longbottom is brief, but powerful. In the book, she trusts him with a crucial mission. In the movie, she tells him directly, "Why don't you blow it up?" referring to the bridge. There is no hesitation, no second guessing. She sees the potential in him and gives him the command. This is the McGonagall of the films, bold, decisive, unafraid. Even in the darkest moments, she does not break. When Voldemort announces Harry's death, the school is in shock. In the book, she is frozen in grief. In the film, she stares at Harry's body, eyes filled with disbelief and sorrow. But she doesn't collapse. She holds the line. She remains the pillar of Hogwarts, the last unshaken figure in the storm. The battle rages and she fights until the end. She was never one to retreat. Even when everything seemed lost, she stood firm. The books give her intelligence and strategy. The films give her fire. Neither is wrong. They are two versions of the same indomitable woman. Minerva McGonagall is not just a teacher, not just a professor. She is the heart of Hogwarts. The books made her a protector. The films made her a warrior. But in both, she is unforgettable. Bellatrix Lestrange is not just a servant of Voldemort. She is chaos itself. In the books, she is ruthless and fanatical, driven by pure devotion. But the films turn her into something more, a force of destruction. She doesn't just fight. She revels in the violence, moving like a storm, unpredictable and deadly. Her battle with Sirius Black is one of the most dramatic changes. In the book, his death is sudden. He laughs and then gone. A single spell, a fall through the veil. It is merciless, efficient. But in the film, Bellatrix plays with him. Their duel is long, almost like a dance. She blocks his spells, taunts him, lets him believe he has the upper hand. And then, when he least expects it, she strikes. The light vanishes from his eyes. She has won. She doesn't flee. She celebrates. "I killed Sirius Black," she screams, spinning through the ruins of the Ministry. Her voice is high, ecstatic. In the book, her triumph is cold, calculated. In the film, she makes sure everyone hears, especially Harry. She wants him to suffer. She wants to savor his pain. Her battle with Molly Weasley is another transformation. In the book, Bellatrix underestimates her, treating her as nothing more than an annoyance. But the film gives her more power. She duels Molly with ease, laughing, mocking. Her arrogance makes her unstoppable, until the moment she loses, Molly's curse strikes true. Bellatrix's grin fades. For the first time, her eyes widen in shock, and then she is gone. Her cruelty is not mindless, it is precise. In the books, she masters the Cruciatus curse, wielding it with cold perfection. She tortures Alice and Frank Longbottom, reducing them to empty shells. In the films, her madness takes a different form. She moves unpredictably, tilting her head, whispering to her victims before striking. She is a predator who enjoys the hunt. She defeats Nymphadora Tonks with effortless grace. The books never show this fight, but the films give her the moment. Tonks barely stands a chance. Bellatrix circles her like a cat with a wounded bird. A flick of her wand, and it's over. When Hermione falls into her hands at Malfoy Manor, the terror is more physical. The book describes Hermione's screams, but the film makes it brutal. Bellatrix drags a dagger across her skin, carving the word mudblood into her arm. The pain is no longer implied, it is real, bleeding, undeniable. Hermione sobs. Bellatrix smiles. She is not just a warrior, she is a performer. When Voldemort calls for her, she does not walk, she crawls. Slithering across the floor, she presses her forehead to his robes like a disciple before a god. Her devotion is absolute. Yet the films make her more than just a follower. They elevate her power. In the book, she hides in Voldemort's shadow. In the film, she stands beside him. When Dobby appears to rescue Harry and his friends, she is the first to react. She hurls the dagger with perfect aim. Voldemort does nothing, she acts on her own. Bellatrix Lestrange was always dangerous. The books make her a devoted servant. The films turn her into a monster. And in both, she is unforgettable. Lucius Malfoy was never meant to be a warrior. He was a schemer, a puppet master who understood that true power rarely lay in wands and curses, but in whispers and alliances. His wealth and influence granted him access to the highest ranks of society, a privilege he wielded as effectively as any spell. In the books, he never needed to dirty his hands with blood. His enemies were crushed under the weight of his political maneuvering long before a duel became necessary. But the films painted a different portrait of him. They made him a force to be reckoned with, a man whose presence on the battlefield carried the same weight as his manipulations in the shadows. In the Chamber of Secrets, the contrast between book and film is striking. Lucius Malfoy in print is deliberate, careful with his words, and far too intelligent to act in reckless aggression. But in the film adaptation, something changes. In one of the final moments of the movie, after Dobby has been freed, Lucius reaches for his wand and utters the beginning of the most unforgivable curse, Avada Kedavra. For a fraction of a second, he is not just an aristocratic puppet master, he is a murderer. It is a chilling deviation from the novel, where he is furious at Dobby's freedom but remains controlled, delivering only a few sharp words before storming away. The film's version of Lucius allows emotion to crack through his composed exterior, exposing a dangerous unpredictability. This single moment reshapes him into something more than a cunning nobleman. It suggests he is a man who, when pushed, is willing to kill a 12-year-old child in broad daylight. Transformation continues in the Order of the Phoenix. In the books, Lucius commands from behind the lines, always letting others dirty their hands while he pulls the strings. During the battle at the Ministry of Magic, he exudes an eerie sense of control. He is the one directing the other Death Eaters, speaking with cold certainty, always a step ahead. But in the film, he becomes something more immediate, more tangible. He does not hide behind his followers, he leads them. When he confronts Harry in the Department of Mysteries, and there is no trace of fear or hesitation in his voice. "Did you really think you stood a chance against us?" he asks, his tone calm, assured. He is not a man who simply plays political games anymore. He is a man who fights, who takes the front line with the confidence of someone who has done it before. The battle itself amplifies his transformation. In the book, the duel between Sirius Black and Bellatrix Lestrange is brief and devastating, over in the blink of an eye. Lucius barely engages in combat himself. He organizes, he strategizes. But in the film, he is a different kind of combatant. He moves with the fluidity of a skilled duelist, deflecting spells, attacking with precision. This is not the Lucius Malfoy of the novels who thrives in courtrooms and political circles. This is a Lucius who fights alongside warriors. His presence in the fight feels earned, as if years of experience have hardened him into something sharper. And yet, when everything falls apart, when Voldemort arrives and the Death Eaters are forced to kneel, Lucius is the first to show true fear. His mask slips. For the first time, he looks powerless. His downfall is as grand as his rise. In The Half-Blood Prince, Lucius's world collapses around him. His mission at the Ministry was a failure, and Voldemort does not tolerate failure. In the books, he becomes a ghost of himself. His wealth and status mean nothing to the Dark Lord, and his name, once feared, is now a whisper of disgrace. But the films take it further. His presence is diminished, his voice quieted. When he returns in the Deathly Hallows, he is no longer the imposing figure he once was. His clothes are no longer pristine. His hair, always slick and perfect, hangs dishevelled around his face. His hands tremble when he grips his wand. He has been reduced to a shadow. The fear in his eyes is palpable during the Malfoy Manor scene. When Voldemort demands his wand, Lucius hesitates. His fingers tighten around it, and for a moment he looks as though he might refuse. But he does not. He cannot. Slowly, almost painfully, he hands over the last weapon he has, the final shred of power he possesses. The man who once commanded respect with a single glance is now just another pawn, his fate dictated by the whims of someone stronger. By the final battle, he is broken. While others prepare for war, Lucius Malfoy stands aside. In the books, he frantically searches for Draco, his only concern now his family. In the films, this desperation is even more pronounced. When Voldemort calls his followers forward, Lucius does not answer. He does not fight for the Dark Lord he once served. Instead, he flees. There is no dignity in his departure. He stumbles as he runs, Narcissa clutching his arm, his head bowed. The transformation is complete. The man who once commanded fear now runs from the battlefield, a coward in the eyes of those who remain. It is this final image of Lucius that lingers long after the credits roll. The books left room for interpretation. Perhaps he had been a man trapped in his circumstances, a father who chose wrong but still had the capacity for redemption. But the films do not grant him that ambiguity. They paint him as something harsher, crueler, a man who wielded power until it slipped from his grasp, and when it did, he had nothing left. This shift in Lucius's character from a calculating, cold manipulator to a more active, yet ultimately broken man, raises a question. Was he always capable of the things the films suggest? Was there, beneath the fine robes and sharp words, a man who was always ready to kill, always prepared to fight? Or was he shaped by the world around him, forced to become something more violent in an effort to maintain the image of the man he once was? The answer is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The Lucius Malfoy of the films is not the same as the one from the books. He is not just a man who loses everything. He is a man who, for a brief time, is willing to do anything to keep it. Severus Snape is one of literature's most intriguing enigmas, and his portrayal in the films elevated his complexity to profound new heights. In J.K. Rowling's original novels, Snape's character was intentionally crafted to perplex, terrify, and mystify readers. He was distant, icy, rarely letting his emotions breach his carefully maintained facade. However, the cinematic depiction by Alan Rickman took this foundation and transformed Snape into not merely a master of potions, but into a duelist, strategist, and a figure whose power extended far beyond the confines of his classroom. In the Chamber of Secrets, we see this transformation vividly. The scene of the dueling club pits Snape against Gilderoy Lockhart. Rowling's text is brief, providing merely the essential action. In the book, Snape quickly disarms Lockhart without dramatics, efficiently and coldly. However, the film imbues the scene with elegance and mastery. Alan Rickman's Snape steps forward with a graceful, feline confidence. His movements are precise, deliberate. Each flick of his wand is calculated. With a barely perceptible twist, he sends Lockhart sprawling to the floor, a rag doll tossed aside by a practiced duelist. This cinematic portrayal gives audiences the impression of Snape as not only powerful, but skilled beyond his reputation as merely a potions master. It deepens our perception of his potential for danger and control. Throughout the novels, Rowling is often sparing in openly showcasing Snape's magical prowess. Instead, his strength is more frequently found in the sting of his verbal jabs, the intensity of his piercing gaze, or in veiled threats and manipulation. Yet the films opt for a different approach, visually displaying Snape's profound magical abilities and confidence. One striking example is found in The Half-Blood Prince. When Harry Potter attempts to use Snape's own spell against him, the film depicts Snape effortlessly deflecting Harry's magic, towering over the boy with stern, authoritative power. The film's Snape delivers the chilling line, "You dare use my own spells against me, Potter? Yes, I am the Half-Blood Prince." In the book, this exchange is terse and quick. In the film, it's expanded, each syllable carrying dramatic weight, underscoring Snape's dominance and silent rage. The portrayal reaches its dramatic peak in Snape's duel with Professor McGonagall in the Deathly Hallows. Rowling's text allows Snape to withdraw swiftly, preserving ambiguity. The film, however, creates an unforgettable visual masterpiece. Snape, faced with McGonagall's fierce attack, does not merely retreat. Instead, he engages her effortlessly, turning her powerful spells aside with practiced ease. One especially poignant moment arises as Snape reflects McGonagall's spell so adeptly that it incapacitates two Death Eaters behind him. His calm control of the chaos around him hints at his true intentions, offering viewers a subtle glimpse into his layered motivations. This deliberate choice adds further complexity to Snape's cinematic character, emphasizing his profound competence and secret heroism. Perhaps no scene highlights the divergence between novel and film as starkly as Snape's death. Rowling's depiction is grim yet swift, understated even in its horror. Nagini strikes, Snape falls, and Harry quickly retrieves the memories from the dying man's mind. However, in the movie, this moment is drawn out, brutally tragic. Nagini's attack is depicted in harrowing detail, striking repeatedly, Snape gasping, struggling, collapsing to the blood-streaked floor. As life ebbs from him, Alan Rickman's whispered plea, "Look at me," echoes with deep emotional resonance. This simple, heartbreaking request, absent from Rowling's pages, makes Snape's final moments deeply poignant, tragic, and unforgettable, underscoring his enduring love for Lily Potter and his lingering humanity. Even Snape's memories are rendered more vividly on screen. Rowling's text provides informative but concise glimpses into Snape's tortured past. Conversely, the film employs rich, emotionally charged visuals to build a narrative of lifelong love and regret. Young Severus, portrayed with raw vulnerability, watches Lily Evans with quiet longing. Viewers witness Snape's isolation at Hogwarts, his painful struggles with identity, and the aching regret etched on his face upon Lily's death. The film punctuates this sequence with Snape cradling Lily's lifeless body, tears streaming down his face, uttering the singularly powerful word, always. In print, this line resonates deeply. In cinema, Rickman's nuanced delivery elevates it to an iconic moment of grief, love, and sacrifice. Another distinct difference emerges in Snape's characterization toward his students. Ruling Snape can often appear ruthless and cruel in his biting remarks and intimidating teaching style. He openly mocks Neville Longbottom and antagonizes Harry relentlessly, his bitterness palpable. Conversely, Alan Rickman's film portrayal maintains Snape's edge while softening the outright cruelty. His interactions become cuttingly sarcastic, yet subtle. Sarcastic, but rarely brutal. The filmmakers intentionally present Snape as enigmatic rather than purely vicious, underscoring his complexity as a man burdened by a painful secret rather than merely a malevolent teacher. Physical descriptions in Rowling's novels emphasize Snape's unhealthy pallor, greasy hair, and unattractive demeanor. This portrayal effectively alienates him from both the reader and characters within the novels. However, Alan Rickman's presence transforms Snape into a striking, elegant figure. Draped in sweeping black robes with meticulously arranged black hair framing a sharp, compelling face, Rickman's Snape exudes charisma and authority. The actor's famously rich voice, deliberate and melodic, commands every scene he inhabits. Thus, Snape evolves from a suspicious, unkempt teacher to a commanding, fearsome presence whose charisma fascinates as much as it frightens. Snape's presence in the films serves not only as a source of fear, but also of fascination. Each scene featuring Rickman is carefully orchestrated, charged with tension and uncertainty. Every action Snape takes, from stepping down the Hogwarts corridor to quietly observing students in his classroom, carries meticulous deliberation, like moves in a finely calculated chess match. He emerges as a strategist, someone who has played a perilous double game for nearly 2 decades. His meticulousness gives each cinematic moment a sense of quiet suspense, as viewers constantly question his loyalties and intentions. Ultimately, Rowling's Snape is a character of profound complexity, crafted with intricate moral ambiguity. The films, however, portray him explicitly as a tragic hero, a character whose cold exterior masks a heart broken by unrequited love and burdened by remorse. His protection of Harry Potter ceases to be merely an obligation or strategy. It becomes a testament to his deep, enduring affection for Lily Potter. Cinematic Snape's emotional complexity enriches his story, making his redemption arc resonate even more powerfully with viewers. The film adaptations consciously emphasize Snape's actions over words. His duels, spells, and confrontations take on dramatic significance, making tangible his internal struggle and heroism. While in the novels, Snape's intentions remain obscured until the series' final revelation, the films skillfully layer subtle visual hints throughout, allowing attentive viewers to catch glimpses of Snape's true nature ahead of the climactic reveal. This artistic narrative choice deepens our engagement with the character, investing each rewatch with new significance. Lord Voldemort is not just a villain, he is fear incarnate. In the books, his presence seeps into every scene like a silent poison, creeping through the words, spreading dread long before he even appears. His voice is calm, his words deliberate. He does not shout. He does not waste energy. Every move he makes is calculated, his threats whispered like cold knives pressed to the throat. He does not act out of uncontrolled rage. His anger is measured, his fury refined into an instrument of terror. But in the films, Voldemort is something else entirely. He is not just a dark wizard, he is a force of nature. He slithers rather than walks, he glides rather than moves. His body shifts like a shadow, barely tethered to the earth. His power is not quiet and insidious, but explosive, unrestrained, devastating. One of the most defining moments of his portrayal comes in the Ministry of Magic, where he finally clashes with Dumbledore. In the book, this battle is not one of brute force, but of intellect and precision. Voldemort's spells are sharp, efficient, aimed to kill with an almost surgical precision. He conjures fire and darkness, but each move is strategic. Dumbledore, in contrast, counters with elegance, weaving his defense with the grace of a master. There is no wasted movement. Every spell, every counterspell is a chess move in a game played between two of the greatest minds in wizarding history. But in the film, this fight transcends reality. The floor of the Ministry is shattered by a torrent of water summoned by Dumbledore. Voldemort coils it into a serpent of fire, an entity that hisses and strikes as though alive. Spells explode like meteors colliding in space, a golden dome of magic crashing against a tide of darkness. The fight is not just between two wizards, it is between two gods clashing in a celestial storm. It is not a duel, it is a battle of elements, the destruction they leave behind a testament to their might. When Voldemort finally arrives at Hogwarts for the final battle, he does not simply enter, he breaks the sky. In the books, the approach of his army is a march, a steady, inevitable doom that presses against the castle like a tightening noose. The protective spells shudder under the strain, but they hold, delaying the inevitable. But in the films, Voldemort himself takes action. He lifts his wand and sends a streak of power into the heavens. The sky cracks like glass. The magic shielding Hogwarts fractures, then collapses in a storm of golden embers. The scene is biblical. He is not a mere sorcerer laying siege to a fortress. He is an apocalypse given form, his will alone enough to tear through barriers meant to withstand centuries of attack. His magic is not just a weapon, it is an extension of his very being, his soul turned outward in a wave of annihilation. Even the way he moves is different. In the books he is fast, almost too quick for the eye, but he moves like a man. His steps are soundless, his presence chilling, but he remains bound by the physical world. In the films he is something else entirely. He does not walk, he drifts. His feet barely touch the ground. He seems to hover, his robes billowing as though caught in an unseen wind. When he strikes, it is not with the swift precision of a warrior, but with the unnatural grace of something not quite human. He does not simply cast spells, his magic is an extension of himself, erupting from him as naturally as breath. It is not learned, not studied, it is as much a part of him as his twisted soul. Perhaps the most harrowing difference comes in the death of Severus Snape. In the book, it is almost quiet. Voldemort, calculating as always, sees Snape as nothing more than an obstacle, a pawn whose usefulness has come to an end. He does not waste energy on theatrics. Nagini kill, he says, and it is done. The snake coils, strikes, and Snape is left to die alone. But in the film, Voldemort is something else. He does not simply order the death, he revels in it. He slashes Snape's throat himself, watching as the man stumbles, gasping. There is no quiet efficiency, no detached cruelty. There is enjoyment. He watches Snape's agony with a twisted satisfaction, relishing every second of suffering. His evil is no longer cold and clinical. It is sadistic, unhinged. This is not the Voldemort of the books. This is something more monstrous, more viscerally terrifying. Yet, for all his inhumanity, there are moments where Voldemort's expressions reveal something deeper, something even more disturbing. He does not smile often, but when he does, it is not warmth that flickers across his face, but mockery, amusement at the suffering of those beneath him. In the final battle, there is a moment where he embraces Draco Malfoy. In the books, there is nothing like this. Draco's defection to his family is quiet, unspoken. But in the film, Voldemort calls him forward, pulls him close. It is not an embrace of compassion. It is a taunt, a twisted parody of affection. He is not welcoming Draco back. He is showing the world that the boy belongs to him, that all who bow before him are his, to do with as he pleases. The way he lingers, the way he touches Draco's face, is not paternal. It is possessive, a chilling display of dominance. Even his laughter is different. In the books, Voldemort does not laugh often. When he does, it is sharp, cruel, devoid of humor. But in the films, his laughter is something else. It is high, thin, piercing. It does not sound natural. It echoes, lingering in the air, like a ghostly wail. It is not the laugh of a man. It is the laughter of something that has forgotten what it is to be human. The final battle between Voldemort and Harry is another moment where the difference between book and film is glaring. In the book, it is swift. There is no drawn-out brawl, no battle through the ruins of Hogwarts. They face each other, words are exchanged, and then with one spell it is over. Voldemort falls like a man. He is not blasted apart, not turned to dust. He dies a mortal death, his body hitting the ground empty, lifeless. There is no spectacle, there is no grandeur. The Dark Lord, who spent decades shaping himself into a figure of legend, dies not as a god, but as a man, stripped of all his power. But in the film, his death is something else entirely. The moment the spell strikes him, he does not simply fall, he disintegrates. His skin flakes away, his form unravels like ash caught in the wind. He vanishes, not with a final scream, not with a last word, but in silence. His death is not the death of a man. It is the unraveling of something that was never truly alive. It is a powerful visual, but it is also a departure from the very essence of his character. Voldemort feared death above all else. He fought against it, defied it, tore his soul apart to escape it. And yet in the film, he is given a death that almost seems peaceful, his body dissolving into nothing. There is no finality to it, no weight. It is poetic, yes, but it strips away the most terrifying truth of his character, that in the end, for all his power, he was only a man, and like all men, he was bound by mortality. Neville Longbottom's journey is one of transformation, of resilience forged through struggle. He enters the story as a clumsy, forgetful boy, often the target of laughter and low expectations. But by the end, he is a warrior, standing before Voldemort with Gryffindor's sword in hand. His growth is one of the most powerful arcs in the entire Harry Potter series, and yet the films reshape it, accelerating his transformation, heightening his heroism. The differences between book and film are subtle at times, stark at others. But one thing remains undeniable. Neville Longbottom's evolution is the story of the boy who should have been broken, yet never allowed himself to stay down. In the books, Neville's fear is real. He dreads potions class, where Professor Snape looms over him like a shadow of impending humiliation. Snape's words cut him deeper than any spell. "Idiot boy," he sneers in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, when Neville fails to properly handle a shrinking solution. The moment is painful, humiliating, and defining. Neville struggles not because he lacks intelligence, but because he lacks confidence. Snape knows it and exploits it mercilessly. The films trim these moments down, focusing more on his bravery in later years. But in the books, Neville's courage isn't immediate. It is painstakingly earned. Early on, Neville's missteps define him. His first year is marked by small disasters, losing his toad, failing in broomstick lessons, being cursed into stiffness by Hermione. Yet there is a glimmer of defiance in him, a seed that will one day grow into something formidable. Dumbledore recognizes this when he awards Neville 10 points for standing up to his friends in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. The books show this moment as a lesson, a step toward a greater destiny. The films treat it more as a small victory, moving quickly past it. But in reality, this is one of Neville's first acts of true bravery. It is the foundation of the hero he will become. By Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Neville's relationship with fear takes a darker turn. When Professor Moody, or rather Barty Crouch Jr., in disguise, demonstrates the Cruciatus Curse, Neville's reaction is visceral. His hands shake. His face is pale. The pain in his expression is too deep for someone who has never felt it himself. Hermione notices. She whispers, "Neville, are you all right?" Because she sees what others do not. Neville is not just afraid, he is remembering. In the books, this moment is drawn out, heavy with unspoken horror. It is not just about a curse being demonstrated, it is about the ghosts of his past clawing their way to the surface. His parents were tortured into madness. He has lived in the shadow of that cruelty all his life. The film acknowledges this with a brief exchange, but the weight of it is reduced. Neville's pain, his quiet suffering, is an undercurrent in the books that slowly transforms into the fuel that ignites his courage. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix is a turning point. This is where Neville begins to shift from frightened boy to reluctant fighter. When Harry teaches Dumbledore's army, Neville is one of the first to join. He is clumsy at first, hesitant, but he does not quit. The only ones who can really fight the Imperious Curse are those with a strong personality, Harry tells the group. Neville listens. He practices. He fails. He gets up again. His stubbornness is his strength. "Don't worry, Neville," Harry says. "You're getting better. You're really getting better." These small affirmations mean everything to Neville. The book shows him struggling for a long time before he improves. The film quickens the pace. Within minutes, Neville is competent. But in the book, it is grueling work. When he finally casts a proper stunning spell, he is shocked, his own power unfamiliar to him. "I did it," he asks, almost disbelieving. It is a quiet moment, but it is everything. In the Department of Mysteries, when Bellatrix Lestrange taunts him about his parents, the books show his fury simmering under his fear. "I'll fight you," he shouts, though his wand hand is shaking. He has no delusions about winning. He knows who she is, what she has done, but he stands against her anyway. The film portrays him as braver, steadier, but in the book, he is raw with fear and anger. He is not the fearless warrior he will one day become. He is a boy with a trembling wand standing his ground because he must. By the time Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince arrives, Neville has settled into quiet resistance. He is not in the spotlight. He does not fight on the front lines. But he does not waver. He continues training. He remains loyal. And when the battle at Hogwarts begins in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, his moment finally comes. The book and film diverge greatly in how they present Neville's role in the final battle. In the book, he leads the resistance at Hogwarts, but it is a quiet underground movement. He is not the open vocal leader he is in the film. He does not give grand speeches. He does not declare to the assembled students, "I'm not alone." Instead, he works in the shadows, hiding in the room of requirement, striking against the Carrows when he can. His bravery is steady, not flashy. When Harry returns, Neville is bloodied, exhausted, but unbroken. He has kept the fight alive. The film transforms this into something larger, more cinematic. Neville stands before Voldemort, publicly defying him. "You and whose army?" he challenges, facing the Death Eaters. The moment is powerful, electric. It cements him as a leader in a way the books do not. In the novel, his confrontation with Voldemort is shorter. He kills Nagini because he must. There is no theatrics, no drawn-out exchange. He sees an opening and he takes it. The film, however, crafts a scene of humiliation and triumph. Voldemort casting Neville aside, the entire battle pausing as he rises again, sword in hand. This is the heart of the difference. In the books, Neville is defined by resilience. He is the boy who gets knocked down and gets up again, over and over. He is not always strong, not always confident, but he refuses to stay broken. The films, however, mold him into a warrior, a symbol of immediate courage rather than one of quiet, relentless persistence. Sirius Black is one of the most compelling characters in the Harry Potter series. He carries the weight of his past, the burden of betrayal, and the scars of years in Azkaban. Yet he remains fiercely loyal, unyieldingly brave, and heartbreakingly reckless. His portrayal in the books and films presents two different versions of the same man, both shaped by loss, both fighting for redemption, yet vastly different in tone and execution. In the books, Sirius is a storm, a force of nature that refuses to be tamed. He is quick-tempered, impatient, and deeply emotional. He does not always think before he acts, and his anger often gets the better of him. When he speaks to Snape in The Order of the Phoenix, the bitterness in his voice is palpable. "You're less like your father than I thought," he tells Harry after an argument, a remark that cuts deep. It is an unguarded moment, revealing his inability to separate Harry from James. He is a man trapped in the past, unable to fully embrace the present. The film version of Sirius is calmer, more composed. He is still passionate, still rebellious, but there is an elegance to him, a quiet dignity. In The Goblet of Fire, his face emerges from burning embers in the fireplace, an artistic choice that makes his appearance more mysterious, almost mystical. In the book, he steps out of the flames like any other wizard. This is the pattern of Sirius's cinematic representation, more grandeur, less rawness. The film smooths out his rough edges, making him less of a flawed, tragic figure and more of a wise and noble guardian. His role as a mentor to Harry is more pronounced in the films. In The Order of the Phoenix, he tells Harry, "We all have both light and dark inside us. What matters is the part we choose to act on." This line does not exist in the books, but it encapsulates a version of Sirius that the films want to highlight, a man with experience, with wisdom to impart. The book Sirius is different. He is often irresponsible in his guidance, treating Harry more like a fellow marauder than a child who needs protection. When Harry insists he is old enough to fight, Sirius responds, "You're truly your father's son," his voice tinged with a longing for the past. It is a tragic flaw, his inability to see Harry as an individual rather than an echo of James. The battle in the Department of Mysteries is a defining moment for Sirius in both mediums. In the book, his fight with the Death Eaters is fast, brutal, and over in an instant. One moment he is laughing, taunting Bellatrix, and the next he is gone, lost behind the veil. It is shocking in its abruptness. The film, however, stretches this moment. Sirius moves with effortless grace, dodging curses, grinning as he fights. He calls Harry baby, a term of endearment that humanizes him, that reminds the audience he is more than just a warrior, he is family. When Bellatrix's curse strikes him, there is a moment of realization. He stares at Harry, almost smiling before he is pulled into the abyss. It is a haunting, painful moment, made even worse by Harry's scream. In the book, Lupin holds Harry back, simply saying, he's gone. In the film, he physically restrains him as Harry fights to reach Sirius, his grief an uncontrollable force. Sirius's flaws in the books make him human. He is not always fair, not always kind. His treatment of Kreacher is one of his greatest failings. The house elf loathes him, and Sirius returns the sentiment. When Hermione tries to explain that Kreacher is a product of his environment, Sirius dismisses her. He's been alone too long, he says, but there is no warmth in his words. He never sees Kreacher as anything more than a nuisance, a mistake that proves fatal when Kreacher betrays them. The film touches on this, but it does not dwell on the depth of Sirius's resentment. It softens him, makes his anger less vicious, his impatience less cruel. His relationship with Remus Lupin also differs between book and film. In the books, there is a tension between them, an unspoken weight of years apart, of trust broken and reforged. When they argue about Snape teaching Harry occlumency, it is sharp, bitter. Sirius lashes out and Remus responds with quiet disapproval. In the film, their interactions are warmer, more nostalgic. Their bond feels less complicated, less marred by the scars of the past. When they fight together at the Ministry, they are a united front, comrades in arms. Sirius's recklessness is another defining trait that the films downplay. In the books, he is impulsive, at times even irresponsible. When Harry is in trouble, he does not think, he acts. It is what gets him killed. His need to be part of the fight, to prove he is still the man he once was, blinds him to the danger. Dumbledore warns him to be cautious, but Sirius does not listen. He is restless, caged in Grimmauld Place, suffocated by its walls. "I'm no use to anyone stuck in this house," he tells Harry. His frustration is palpable. The film captures this but makes it more subdued. He is not as openly resentful, not as consumed by his need to escape. One of the most striking changes is his portrayal during Harry's 4th year. In the book, he is constantly on edge, hiding in caves, barely surviving. He is gaunt, unshaven, a fugitive in every sense. He warns Harry, "Play it cool, boy. We don't want to give them any reason to suspect you." His paranoia is evident. The film, however, does not show this level of desperation. When he speaks to Harry in the Gryffindor common room fire, he is calm, almost regal. His ragged edges are smoothed out. The danger he faces is acknowledged but not felt in the same way. Sirius is a tragic figure, and his tragedy is amplified in the books. His death is senseless, his life marked by injustice. He loses everything, his best friends, his freedom, his chance at a family with Harry, and yet he never stops fighting. That is what makes him so compelling. He is a man shaped by suffering, yet he refuses to let it break him. His final moments, whether in the book's stark abruptness or the film's lingering sorrow, encapsulate his essence. He dies as he lived, defiant, reckless, and free. Ginny Weasley's journey in Harry Potter is a story of transformation, but the way she evolves in the books differs greatly from her portrayal in the films. The book version of Ginny is a gradual build-up, a shy, quiet girl with a fierce spirit waiting to break through. She grows into a strong, independent young woman who holds her own in battle and relationships. In contrast, the films compress this evolution, making her an almost invincible warrior from the start. When we first meet Ginny in the Chamber of Secrets, she is the blushing, stammering little sister of Ron Weasley, utterly captivated by Harry Potter. She can barely speak in his presence, much less act as a force of her own. But beneath this shy exterior lies a deep resilience. She survives one of the darkest ordeals in the entire series, possession by Tom Riddle's diary. "I've been writing in it for months, and he's been writing back. I don't know why I kept going. It was like I couldn't stop." She confesses this in a trembling voice, revealing the depth of her suffering. This traumatic experience should not be overlooked. It marks the beginning of Ginny's transformation. She learns firsthand the dangers of dark magic, the cost of being naive, and the power of standing against evil. By the time she returns to Hogwarts the following year, she is no longer the frightened girl clinging to the edges of conversations. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, she is still in the background, but she starts to develop her own voice, slowly but surely gaining confidence. It isn't until the Order of the Phoenix that we truly see her rise. In the books, her involvement in Dumbledore's army is a critical step in her growth. She trains hard, learns to fight, and becomes an adept duelist. She even renames the group Dumbledore's Army with a touch of defiance. This is the Ginny who will become a leader. However, the film skips much of this slow, deliberate progression. Instead, in Order of the Phoenix, she appears as a fully formed warrior with remarkable power. She shatters glass with a flick of her wand in the battle at the Ministry of Magic, a moment that was never in the book. This scene is emblematic of how the films amplify Ginny's physical strength while neglecting her emotional and intellectual growth. In the book, she fights bravely but remains in a supporting role. She does not command the battle, nor does she perform feats of magic that outshine her companions. In the film, however, she is presented as nearly untouchable, barely reacting when danger looms. This shift strips away the depth of her character. Book. Ginny gains her strength through struggle and experience. Film. Ginny simply arrives fully equipped. A crucial difference emerges in her battle with Bellatrix Lestrange. In the novel Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, her duel with Bellatrix is brief and dangerous. She holds her ground but quickly finds herself outmatched. It is Molly Weasley, her mother, who steps in to deliver the iconic line, "Not my daughter, you bitch." The power of this moment lies in Ginny's vulnerability. She is strong, but not invincible. She needs her mother's protection, and there is nothing wrong with that. In the film, however, she fights Bellatrix longer, with more skill, diminishing the contrast between her and her vastly more experienced opponent. The film version of Ginny often diminishes key elements of her personality, replacing them with an almost otherworldly presence. One of the most glaring examples of this occurs in The Half-Blood Prince. In the book, it is Harry who chooses where to hide the Half-Blood Prince's textbook. He takes responsibility for his own actions, making a decision that reflects his growing maturity. In the film, Ginny takes charge. She leads Harry into the room of requirement, instructing him, "Close your eyes." The scene is surreal, stripped of the natural banter and warmth that characterized their book relationship. In the novels, Ginny is witty and direct, often teasing Harry. "You'd think people had better things to gossip about," she says, when she and Harry begin dating, dismissing the school's whispers. This sharp humor, a defining part of her charm, is almost entirely absent from the films. Instead, film Ginny is a figure of stillness and silence. Her power is conveyed through looks, gestures, and moments of dramatic intensity. This is most apparent in The Order of the Phoenix, where she rarely speaks despite playing a pivotal role in Dumbledore's army. One of the most powerful lines she delivers in the book, when she tells Harry, "Of course I know what it's like to be possessed by Voldemort," is missing in the movie. This omission weakens her character, reducing her to a passive observer rather than an active participant in the story. The romantic dynamic between Harry and Ginny suffers the most from these changes. In the books, their relationship is built on mutual understanding, respect, and shared humor. Ginny is never timid with Harry. She calls him out when necessary, supports him when he needs it, and doesn't wait for him to notice her. She moves on, dates others, and builds a life outside of her feelings for him. This independence is crucial. It is what makes their eventual relationship so compelling. Harry falls for Ginny not because she is devoted to him, but because she is strong, confident, and self-sufficient. The films fail to capture this dynamic. Their romance is stilted, marked by awkward silences and half-hearted moments of connection. One of the most telling changes is the way their first kiss happens. In the book, it is spontaneous, passionate, and entirely in character. After a Quidditch victory, Harry, caught up in the moment, kisses Ginny in front of everyone. She responds with enthusiasm, and they walk away together, unconcerned with the watching eyes. It is a scene filled with joy and excitement. In the film, the moment is replaced with an entirely different scenario. Ginny kisses Harry in the room of requirement, quietly, cautiously, as though their relationship is a secret rather than something to be celebrated. This choice strips away the warmth and authenticity of their connection. The overall portrayal of Ginny in the films turns her into a mysterious, almost ethereal presence rather than a fully developed character. The book, Ginny is outspoken and lively, unafraid to stand her ground. She jokes with Fred and George, teases Ron, and argues with Harry when necessary. She is real. The film version, in contrast, is quiet and enigmatic, often defined by her proximity to Harry rather than by her own actions. One of the greatest strengths of Book Ginny is her ability to hold her own in a world dominated by strong personalities. She grows up with 6 older brothers, each with their own distinct characteristics, yet she never fades into the background. She makes her presence known, not by overpowering others, but by standing firm in who she is. This resilience is what makes her so compelling. She is not just Harry's love interest. She is a hero in her own right. This distinction is particularly evident in the Deathly Hallows. In the book, when Harry breaks up with her for her safety, she does not beg or cry. She understands. "I knew you'd say that," she tells him, showing her emotional maturity. She does not collapse under the weight of her love for him. She accepts it and moves forward. The films fail to capture this depth, reducing her role significantly in the final battle. In the books, she is a key fighter at Hogwarts, risking her life alongside her friends. In the movies, her presence in the battle feels diminished, her story arc incomplete. The differences between Book Ginny and Film Ginny ultimately come down to how each medium chooses to depict strength. The books allow her to grow into her power, facing challenges and learning from them. Her victories feel earned. The films, however, present her as nearly flawless from the start, robbing her of the struggles that made her such a compelling character. Draco Malfoy was never meant to be a hero, nor was he the ultimate villain. He occupied that strange space between arrogance and fear, a boy raised to believe in his superiority, yet never quite strong enough to truly embody it. In J.K. Rowling's books, Draco was all talk, a schoolyard bully who relied on his father's name and family's wealth to maintain a sense of power. He was not a fighter, not truly. His cruelty was sharpened by words rather than actions, and when put under pressure, he faltered. In the movies, however, he became something else, a more menacing figure, a character who, even in his weakness, carried an edge of danger. It wasn't just the way Tom Felton played him, it was in the way the films framed him, the way they altered his presence, shifting him from a cowardly antagonist to a troubled, almost tragic character teetering on the edge of darkness. Perhaps one of the most striking changes in the films was the way Draco Malfoy's magic was portrayed. In the books, he rarely displayed much talent beyond what was expected of any Hogwarts student. His duels with Harry Potter were unimpressive. He lost more often than he won, relying on brute force spells rather than true finesse. He taunted, provoked, and when things didn't go his way, he hid behind others. The most significant example of this was during the battle in the Department of Mysteries, when he wasn't even present, despite his father leading the charge. In contrast, the movies made him sharper, quicker. His duel with Harry in Half-Blood Prince was a prime example of this shift. In the book, Draco is caught off guard in the bathroom, unable to react in time before Harry hits him with Sectum Sempra. He is vulnerable, exposed. In the movie, however, he is different. He moves with precision, his spells fired off with a lethal swiftness that makes him seem more than just a schoolyard bully. He fights like someone who has been trained, someone capable of causing real harm. This small change alters his entire character, making him feel like a real threat rather than just an entitled boy with a famous father. But perhaps the most striking difference between the book and the film portrayal of Draco Malfoy lies in his emotional journey. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, the book version of Draco is a wreck, a boy forced into an impossible situation, consumed by stress and fear. He is not plotting with confidence, but crumbling under the weight of the Dark Lord's expectations. His transformation into a Death Eater is not a glorious ascension, but a forced march into something he never truly wanted. His reluctance is evident in his words, in his hesitation, in the way he struggles to fix the vanishing cabinet, knowing what it will bring. The book gives us this through narration and small moments, like when Harry overhears Draco crying in the bathroom, saying, "No one can help me. I can't do it. I can't. It won't work. And unless I do it soon, he says he'll kill me." These words show just how trapped he feels, how much of a child he still is despite the weight placed upon him. The films amplify this fear, but express it in a different way. In Tom Felton's performance, Draco doesn't simply seem afraid, he seems tormented. The hesitation is in his face, his trembling hands, his tightening jaw. We see him stare at the dark mark on his arm, his horror unspoken yet tangible. The most significant moment of this comes during the confrontation with Dumbledore in the Astronomy Tower. In the book, Draco is sweating, shaking, his wand unsteady. He speaks in half-formed sentences, unable to bring himself to kill. "I haven't got any options," he blurts out, desperately trying to justify his predicament. He is not a killer. He never was. The film captures this but elevates the tension further. When he lowers his wand, it is not just a refusal, it is a breakdown. His face is contorted with inner turmoil, his breathing ragged. The camera lingers on him, allowing the audience to feel his struggle in a way the book can only describe. This is where the adaptation shines, not by changing his story, but by allowing us to see the war raging within him. Another notable change in Draco's characterization is how his fear of Voldemort is visualized. In the books, we understand his terror through his words and actions, how he clings to his family, how he flinches at the mention of failure. We see him struggle through dialogue, but it remains internalized for the most part. The films, however, externalize this terror. One of the most impactful moments comes during the Death Eater takeover of Hogwarts in Half-Blood Prince. In the book, Draco is relieved when Snape takes over, but in the film, he hesitates, his eyes filled with horror as Dumbledore pleads with him. He does not want this. When Bellatrix urges him forward, his expression is not that of a victorious Death Eater. It is the face of a boy who realizes he has walked into a nightmare. His presence in the Deathly Hallows films further cements this shift. While in the books he is largely absent, his role diminished to brief moments of forced allegiance. The films keep him in the audience's mind. His reluctance is clearer, his fear magnified. The moment where Voldemort calls him forward to rejoin the Death Eaters is particularly powerful. In the book, he obeys, albeit hesitantly. In the film, it is a painfully slow walk, his body language screaming reluctance. Even his parents show their struggle, Narcissa gripping his arm tightly as if afraid to let him go. This is where the movie version of Draco truly diverges from his book counterpart. He is no longer just a privileged boy playing at darkness. He is someone who has been broken by the very world he was raised to worship. Draco's cowardice is another aspect that is subtly reworked in the films. In the books, his final year at Hogwarts is spent avoiding trouble, retreating into himself. He does not actively fight back against Voldemort, but he also does not stand with him. His role in the final battle is minor. He is there, but not in any significant way. The films, however, expand upon this. His reluctance is given more weight, and his final moment of defiance is made clearer. When Harry reveals himself to be alive, Draco's hesitation is palpable. He looks at Voldemort, then back at Harry, his eyes filled with doubt. The book only hints at this moment, but the film makes it undeniable. Draco Malfoy, for all his upbringing, cannot bring himself to stand against the light, and yet the films do not make him a hero. This is perhaps their greatest achievement in adapting his character. They humanize him, but they do not redeem him in an unrealistic way. He does not suddenly fight alongside Harry. He does not turn against his family. He flees, but he flees in a way that feels earned, in a way that acknowledges his inner struggle. The final shot of him in the epilogue, where he stands with his own family, looking at Harry from a distance, is the perfect conclusion. It is a silent acknowledgement of the past, a quiet understanding that they will never be friends, but that the war is over. The books gave us a Draco Malfoy who was a coward when it mattered, a boy who never quite lived up to his own bravado. The films took that same character and, without changing his core arc, made him feel more layered, more tragic. They allowed the audience to feel his conflict in a way that went beyond words on a page. His journey was not one of redemption, but of survival, and in the end, that was all he ever truly wanted, to survive.